Hi everyone, I hope you are doing well today. This is Samantha Varner from ProSymmetry. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar on our skill matrix. A few things before we get started. Sean is going to be giving this presentation today. We're really excited for that. We will be operating on version 5.1. That is when we released the skill matrix. So if you don't have these capabilities yet, that would be why. Please reach out to me if you would like to get upgraded. We do those at no cost to you, and we can do them at a time that is best for you as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. A few other things, we have 2 more webinars scheduled, one on the 2nd and one on the 9th. On the 2nd, we will be covering project sheets, and then on the 9th, we will be covering the purpose for the project proposal. So just a few more tips and tricks with Tempus, and then after that, we will be moving to a bi-weekly schedule with these webinars, just to kind of let you all soak in what has been done and kind of review and reflect and move forward with those. As always, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the questions area of the GoToWebinar area. We will be taking questions at the end, so feel free to ask anything. And then if for some reason we run out of time, I will go ahead and follow up with the answers to your questions as well. And with that, Sean, I think we might be ready to go. Are you ready?
Yes, ready to get going. Okay, give me just 2 seconds here. I'm just closing the 500 screens I've opened, and then I will share my screen and we will discuss skills matrix. This is an exciting area with a lot of engagement from clients and quite a bit of interest. And we've already got a ton of feedback, and we have lots of stuff in the roadmap that I can talk to a bit as well as we navigate throughout the presentation, which I'm basically going to do just from a live demo environment. So Samantha, if you can just confirm that you can see my Tempus screen, I will then get going.
Yep, I can see it. We're good to go.
Perfect. Okay, all right, thanks everyone again for joining. I'm Sean. Again, if you need to get in touch with me, you can reach out directly or obviously contact Samantha, who can then get your questions answered or introduce you to me or other members of the team. So today we're discussing skills matrix, and if you're familiar with Tempus, today, of course, we have a centralized resource pool, which is really the foundational aspect of the entire application, where we track and manage and store and update named and generic placeholder resources. And we've had for quite some time a range of custom attributes, an attribution engine, if you will, where your organization can import attributes, create brand new ones in application. And I think there's something like 15 different data types, enums or selection, multi-select, Boolean, date string, text, you name it. And the majority of those flow through into reporting as well. And we can then edit them inline through the application, through the API, through Excel, and so on. And all this stuff, of course, is immediately available for report writing. But the one thing that we weren't doing, and we've started to get a lot of feedback on it, it was starting even a number of years ago, but it wasn't very well adapted or formed. But I think customers have really come along, and even new prospects as well, in asking, well, how do we enforce or how do we allow end users to submit their skills? How do we track not just that someone's a developer, but what areas of development they're knowledgeable in and what their competencies are, where have they passed or failed certain certifications. And there might be a mix of those skills that are necessary that are maybe company, group, area specific, then there's others that are company wide. So how do we handle all these things with a skills matrix function? And just to skip ahead a bit, and we're going to go through every aspect of this, what we did is with 5.1, we introduced a skills matrix functionality that now allows us, underneath any resource that we drill into, assuming we have rights to at least view the data, we can now access underneath the resource options menu, audit log, but now skills matrix. And the skills matrix feature lets us, either as managers, administrators, or as the end users themselves, complete or essentially self-certify, if you will, from a predefined set of skills matrix categories. And we'll walk through how all of this gets created, and then I'll circle back to walk through this in more detail. But then essentially for each resource, specify using a variety of units of measure, whether they're yes or no, so sort of Boolean, whether they're a continuous type of or range-based of 1 to 5, Others are going to be more experience-based, low, basic, demonstrating proficient. And then we have the ever-present low, medium, and high. All right, so we can then set these much more granular levels of knowledge, sufficiency, insufficiency in certain skills areas on a resource-by-resource basis. So this is the skills matrix functionality. We're going to talk much, much more about this, but where I'd like to take you first is where you'd actually configure the skills matrices. As you can imagine, like everything else in Tempus, all of the skills matrix configuration and settings are going to be maintained underneath your admin settings. So if we browse to admin settings, and you'll notice sort of dead center in the screen, there's now a skills category tile. And this is where you would go to create, to update, to delete centrally and govern the overall skills matrices that you've defined for your entire Tempus environment. All right, now there's going to be a number of options we have in terms of who can actually set the skills matrix values. And we see a lot of variation across clients. Some are very much sort of command and control, where managers or admins are setting the values for the users. Others are opening this up and making it much more engaging, allowing the end user to submit and fulfill or update their own skills matrix values. And then we have others that kind of mix and match and sit in various levels of that continuum where they want to be with regards to who can make the updates. But in terms of the actual configuration, that's done here under skill categories. When we click on it, it's going to take us to our inventory of skills matrix categories. You'll see a list of those here that have been previously created. If you're brand new to this screen will essentially be empty. So you'll have nothing beneath this more darkly or dark blue formatted outline here. And beneath create, you'll see nothing. In this case, I've got a number of these predefined. Now, to create a new skills matrix category, and you can think of each one of these categories as its own little matrix. We call them categories because they're really groupings of skills or groupings of certifications, however you want to capture these things, that can then be deployed uniquely. So if you remember earlier when I was in the individual resource and I was selecting from a list, it allowed me to pull from a number of different options. And each one of those checkboxes was associated to each one of these skills matrix categories. So from the standpoint of design patterns, what can be very useful here, and we already envision ways of controlling this through the hierarchy, resource hierarchy, and through security, and even setting default skills matrix categories on a resource by resource basis. And the benefit is that you can have some skills that are sort of categorized as company-wide. If there's core certifications or achievements you must have, then those might be for everybody. But then depending upon your role, your department, your location, who knows, any of those factors, and there could be many, many more, you might have additional skills matrix or skills matrices that you're required to complete that again are particular to that line of business, how forecasting is done, planning, resource searching, even achieving various goals and employee engagement and all the stuff that comes along with that. So to create a brand new category, and I'll just create one that we'll mock up and now later I'll remove it, but let's just say this is a new category. And we might name this something like, let's say, global compliance, right? That might be the actual name. You don't need the new category, obviously, but I'm just using this naming convention here just to illustrate what we're doing. I would then choose how am I going to measure this information. Now, everything inside the skill matrix category would share the same unit of measure. So that's another design pattern to consider, is that if they're purely yes, no type category items, then we'd want to contain them in a unique skills matrix category. But in this case, you'll notice the options are range. So we have 1 to 5, 1 being lowest, 5 being the highest, Boolean, yes or no, category, low, medium, high, and then the advanced category that lets us capture low, basic, demonstrating, proficient, and expert. So these are the 4 units of measure that are in the product now. We certainly envision other options down the road. We also envision capabilities where you as the customer will be able to define what these selections are. So we've already gotten feedback, for example, like range 1 to 5. Other customers are doing different, maybe 0 to 7, 1 to 3, 1 to 10, 100 to 1,000, whatever they may be. So we'd let you define what those are. And then also more granularly, or I should say maybe in a more detailed fashion, define what each of those would mean. So what does a 1 mean? What does a 2 mean? So more descriptions around what those values are that you would see inside the UI. Right? But again, this is version 1. So in this case, let's just say that this is Boolean, it's true and false, and these might just be generic compliance topics. Has received company computer, completed security. If I can't, well, I'll try to spell better. Security. You can always come back and rename these, so you don't have to recreate them. Completed security training. I don't know. Completed, a self-assessment. Okay, so again, just really generic, totally misspelled in this case. That's cool, but again, very generic, high-level compliance-related topics that we're measuring the true and false. Right? And you can imagine how these might be broken out. So once these are set, I would hit create. That will now add that to my listing of predefined categories, which you can see here. Maybe to give you a better feel for how this would be used in reality, you'd see some other areas like compliance, education, educational level, functional skills, industry experience, industry expertise. Again, a lot of these are for demos, but if I drill into any one of these, you can see, for example, on functional skills, or let's do industry experience, I'm listing out various industries and then associating with a category to tell us, how proficient is somebody in commercial, government, mining, power, oil and gas, telecom, water, and so on, right? And then you can always, again, edit these. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay. You can always come back and change the name of the skill matrix category. You can change the values you see here by adding new, removing existing, or literally overwriting and changing the actual value. If you change the data type, how we're capturing the measurement, then you basically clear the values. So that operation can be destructive. But other than that, again, very flexible in terms of adding new, removing, or altering what values are seen here. Then you can simply save or cancel those changes. All right, so that's our skills matrix configuration. Very, very simple to put in place. We'll also be adding more functionality around uploading these data. So we'll be adding things around upload of skills matrix data via the API. That won't be in 5.2, it'll probably be in 5.3. 5.2 separately, though, we'll have more Excel upload around admin time. So for those of you that have been looking for that capability, that'll be in 5.2. Okay, so that's the configuration of our skills matrix categories. The next area I want to talk about before we get into how the values are set and how we can report on this information and where it's usable, the next thing I want to talk about is just security. So a lot of questions around where and how do I grant people access to this. So if we go to admin settings, again, access management, these tiles here will control who can do and see and edit what objects in the system, like always. And we've added a few features that are worth noting. So number one, under role management, under global role, and I'm gonna have to fiddle around here a little bit to find them. It's usually right in front of my face. But the first one to be aware of is manage skills matrix. So this is a global role related setting. And this tells us, can that user or members of that group, I should say, create, update, delete the centrally managed skills matrix categories. So the stuff I just walked through, generally, again, that's going to be reserved for your admins, your system admins, or others, whoever owns the tool in the organization, generally speaking. And that's what we'd want to enable. So we'd want to turn on this managed skills matrix. All right, so that's the configuration side. Now, in terms of who can actually interact and set the skills matrix values for any particular resource, again, there's two different angles here. One is we want the user to be able to go in and edit their own skills values. So that's one option. The other is we want the manager to set the skills matrix values for his or her direct or indirect reports. So if we look at the former, and that's as an end user, that one we made really, really simple because the design pattern is pretty straightforward. As the end user, you can either edit your own skills matrix value or not. And to do that, we made that a global role setting. So this edit own skills setting here would essentially allow any person individually, as long as they're a member of a group, global role that is, that has this permission, they would have rights to go to their resource listing, open their account essentially, or their profile, and then edit their skills matrix values. All right, so that gives them the edit own skills functionality. Now, the latter scenario, that's where, the traditional approach where the manager is the one completing these assessments for their resources. That's going to be done using the resource role in combination with a resource rule or access policy. So under resource roles, you'll see there's now this access skills option, very far right. And you'll see the options here include no access, which is the X, edit rights, where any resource that's part of that access policy where this resource role is utilized can edit those skills matrix values. And the third is view. So we can give people read-only access to skills matrix data if you wish. All right, so that's what we would do to configure access policies or access to, for managers to edit their resource profile. Now, again, that assumes that we also have the resource access policy in place. But again, that should be the case in these deployments. If not, I would certainly recommend you reach out and we can walk you through how that's done. But again, as a quick refresher, these resource access policies dictate which users, either by name or group, can access which resources by group or by names and have what level of rights. And again, if I hover here, this will show me what rights I have. Notice in this case, this does give me the ability to access the skills for these resources. You notice the very last option, there's a checkbox next to it. So it's utilizing that resource role in combination with this rule between users and resources to allow that access. But again, starting to get into the weeds of security, certainly would recommend you reach out. We can walk you through someone from our support team, myself, Samantha, or anyone else on the team can assist. Okay, so that's the configuration on the skills matrix side, both from a configuration standpoint as well as from the security configuration standpoint. Where we'll go next, and this is really a refresher of what we talked about earlier, is to themselves. All right, so in this particular case, if we wanted to update the skills matrix values for any particular resource or user, this is where I would browse to resource management. Your security policies would govern which resources you have access to, and then as a result, which skills matrix or skills matrices you're able to update. Again, we'll do this really straightforward and simple. Let's just select, how about this resource here, Joshua Butler. We see the attributes, the capacity, but in this case, we want to, in the very top right, select the resource options icon, and we'll go to skills matrix. So big red flag, if you don't see this selection option, then security is off. So you don't have access to it. The moment, however, you can see this, you're pretty close. Either you're going to have read-only access or you'll be able to achieve your objective of actually updating. So first things first, make sure you see skill matrix as your selection option. When you choose it, it's going to open up just like this. So in this case, if you haven't made any mods to a resource, done any skill matrix configuration, it's going to load empty. This page is going to look exactly the way you're seeing it right now. Now, to incorporate or associate skills matrix categories to this particular resource user, I'm going to select from the drop-down list here under this blue icon, categories. Now, this gives me a drop-down list that shows me all of those skills matrix categories that were available that I showed you earlier under that configuration screen. So you're seeing them all. You'll notice checkboxes to the left that allows me to incorporate the skills matrix category into this skills matrix screen for this user or resource. The name, you'll also see the data type. Is it Boolean? Is it a selection? Is it a range? Those 4 different data types that I'd mentioned earlier. So in this case, just to quickly show, why don't we select a new category, global compliance, that we built a moment ago. And all I do is select the checkbox and just click away. This will insert that skills matrix category. You'll see the title to the far left, the various skills, or in this case, questions or compliance topics underneath. And then you'll see a little icon here from which we can edit the associated values. So received company computer, yes. Completed security training, yes. Completed self-assessment, no. Right. So we'll fill this out. And once this is completed and we hit save, these information become available then throughout the application. Now, if you wanted to remove or hide the skills matrix settings here, I can simply click on this trash bin that will remove this association from this particular view. Now, giving you some other examples, let's choose maybe a range, maybe a selection. Let's see what else we have. How about some other selections here? Solutions, that's good. All right, so under solutions, this is an example of one where we have the advanced category selected. So for these various solution areas, data analytics, infrastructure lifecycle, renewables, sustainability, this is where we have that advanced category selection, which gives us low, basic, demonstrating, proficient, and expert. And later, when we go to some of the built-in reporting, you're going to see that this lets us do kind of a red, yellow, green heat mapping on sufficiency or insufficiency across the company in these skills. And in this case, the lower values are going to be red. The more expert, proficient values are going to be a darker green. Now, the other categories here, this is a basic low, medium, and high selection. This also is going to be red, yellow, green type of layout. Low is red, medium is going to be yellow, high will be green. Another one below is a range. So this is a 1 to 5, 5 being the green, 1, 2 being the reds. So again, you can adjust these as necessary. And then Boolean, true and false. You know, the false is going to be red, true is going to be green when we get to the heat mapping. Right? So those are your handful of examples that show us the various options for setting the skills matrix values. And again, based on your use cases, your security, you're going to determine how users can make these updates, whether it's done by a manager in that traditional command and control type of approach, which is really, I think, where the majority of our clients are. Or if it's the more, let's open things up to everybody type of approach where the end user sets the values, that's also an option. But again, it's your choice how you wish to implement. But lots of investment coming in this area. All right, so the last place I'm going to take you, and then we can and wrap up, make this fairly quick, is these information flowing through into reporting. Now, one place we can go to see this information is under report management. And there's now a built-in report that looks at the skills matrix information to understand the sufficiency or insufficiency of those skills. And that's going to be found under this all setting. And by the way, just as a quick preview, 5.2, we finally are launching the foldering capabilities for report management. So you'll still have access to this screen, but you'll also have a new tab up top for folders. And you go to folders, and then you can make that your preferred layout. You can then create various folders to drag and drop your reports into those folders, adding some context and better organizing that layout. So that's coming very, very soon. Okay, so let's browse to all. And notice we now have a new built-in report called Skill Matrix Report. Now, when you launch the Skill Matrix Report, it's going to return all the resources. It's also going to return only the categories you've inserted. So in this case, let me just remove them. So we'll start with a blank report. And where I would start is by choosing which categories I want to insert. So these are going to be transposed from left to right. And remember, we had compliance, educational level, and these are all just pulling from the same areas. Let's do maybe our new category, which is really only set maybe on 1 or 2 resources. So that's going to be actually not very useful. Let's switch. Maybe functional skills. Industry experience, that's a better one. Educational level, that's not so bad. Research areas, service skills, solutions. So we can insert these various skills matrix categories. You can also, if you wish, notice we're sorting resources here, alphanumeric, left from top to bottom. But in the top right, you'll also find a filtering function. So you can use any of the built-in or custom attributes at the resource entity level to conduct your filtering. And you can use complex filters or simple filters. There's also a heat map overlay. When I select that, that's going to overlay our heat map on top of these values in the fashion I mentioned earlier, the red, the yellow to green, based on those levels and how those values have been set. You can also insert additional resource attributes. So notice to the left, you have the name of the resource, but perhaps it's also valuable here to understand what is their department association. What is their employment basis? Let's see, what else do we have here? What is their location? So we can insert a variety of resource attributes to better construct this report to answer real-world questions. And you'll find throughout the report, we can sort by any of the headers, right? So any of our skill values, we can sort by, so whether they're locations, employment type, departments, or the resource names. We can very easily do that as well. And then you'll also find at the top of the screen options here to export to Excel, and also options to export to PDF. So that's our skills matrix report. Really useful, really helpful in identifying these data, both in terms of their sufficiency, where have we and haven't we set our skills data. And then you'll continue to see more of the skills matrix related functionality get embedded in additional functionality. So there's extensive plans to also introduce these data into the resource replacement functions, into the resource request workflow, into the build team, and a number of other interfaces and additional reports where these information become critical. We're seeing and being asked quite aggressively by some clients around getting these into, again, screens where we're searching for resources. So if I'm in a resource replacement workflow or resource request workflow, and I've been asked for someone that has these skills, allow me to quickly search for people by those skills. So those are things that are also coming very, very soon. Hopefully those are, all baked and ready as part of 5.2. So that's our skills matrix. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them after. I do have to wrap up a little bit early today. But Samantha, I guess at this point, I'll hand it back to you for any closing points.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, John. It doesn't look like we have any questions that came in during that. So if anyone does have any questions, please just send them my way. I will gladly help answer anything. Just a reminder, you will receive a link to the recording of this webinar about 24 hours from now. And you are more than welcome to share that with your team. It will also be in the Help Center, our new online Help Center, within a few days as well. So it'll be available there. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to bring the skill matrix to you and evolve and grow that with you all. So thank you everyone. Have a great day.